The year 1997 marked a significant moment. Great Britain handed Hong Kong over to China. Britain had taken Hong Kong Island in the 19th century. This followed the First Opium War. Later, Britain also gained Kowloon. Then, in 1898, Britain leased the new territories for 99 years. The deadline was clear, 1997. The Sino-British Joint Declaration was signed in 1984. This agreement laid out the terms of the handover. It promised that Hong Kong would become a special administrative region of China. This arrangement was called One Country, Two Systems. For many in Hong Kong, there was a mix of hope and anxiety. On July 1st, 1997, the handover took place. The British flag was lowered. The Chinese flag was raised. For Britain, it symbolized the end of its colonial empire. For China, it was a moment of national pride. The world watched closely. The mood in Hong Kong itself was complex. Some residents emigrated, fearing the future. Others chose to stay, placing their faith in the promises of the Joint Declaration. Many believed Hong Kong's strengths would protect its unique way of life. However, the very nature of the agreement contained ambiguities. The One Country, Two Systems principle was a novel idea. It was proposed by Deng Xiaoping, China's paramount leader. The main goal was to unify China. This included Hong Kong, Macau, and eventually Taiwan. The concept acknowledged that these territories had different systems. It allowed them to keep their capitalist economic and social systems. For Hong Kong, this meant its way of life would remain unchanged for 50 years after 1997. Under this framework, Hong Kong was guaranteed significant autonomy. It would manage its own executive, legislative, and judicial affairs. It would keep its own currency, the Hong Kong dollar. Freedoms such as freedom of speech, of the press, and of assembly were also promised. This distinction was crucial. The city was to be a bridge, not a mirror, of the mainland. However, the One Country, Two Systems formula was always seen by many as a temporary solution. The 50-year period until 2047 implied an endpoint. The inherent tension in the framework was clear. This fundamental difference in understanding was a fault line. Great Britain's approach to the Hong Kong handover was shaped by its declining global power. The age of empire was over. Britain sought a dignified exit from its last significant colonial territory. The Sino-British Joint Declaration was presented as a triumph of diplomacy. It was meant to secure Hong Kong's stability and prosperity. It was also intended to protect British economic interests in the region. The British government hoped that the One Country, Two Systems framework would genuinely preserve Hong Kong's unique character. There was an element of miscalculation in the British strategy. Some argue that Britain underestimated China's long-term intentions. The China of the 1980s was focused on economic reform and opening up. By the 2010s, under new leadership, China became more assertive. The British likely hoped that the international treaty would be a strong enough guarantee. Furthermore, some analyses suggest the British knew they could not hold on to Hong Kong indefinitely. The 99-year lease on the new territories was a clear deadline. The British desire to maintain a degree of separation was understandable. Instead, the reverse began to happen. The framework designed to protect Hong Kong became a tool for managing its gradual absorption. Hong Kong's geography has always tied it closely to mainland China. It is not an isolated island nation. It is a small territory located on the southeastern coast of China. Much of its land area, the new territories, is directly connected to the mainland. This physical proximity creates undeniable links. These links are not just about lines on a map. They involve shared resources, environmental concerns, and the natural flow of people. The territory is heavily reliant on mainland China for essential resources. Water is a prime example. Hong Kong imports a significant portion of its fresh water from Guangdong province. Food supplies also depend heavily on the mainland. Hong Kong's limited physical space also contributes to integration pressures. The development of the Greater Bay Area Initiative is a modern example of this. This plan aims to integrate Hong Kong, Macau, and several cities in Guangdong province into a single economic and business hub. Hong Kong's economic success was historically built on its role as a gateway. It was a gateway between China and the rest of the world. After China began its economic reforms in the late 1970s, Hong Kong became crucial. It was a source of capital, expertise, and international connections for the mainland. In turn, China's growing economy provided immense opportunities for Hong Kong businesses. This mutual dependence created a powerful economic bond. The prosperity of Hong Kong became increasingly intertwined with the economic trajectory of mainland China. This was a partnership that benefited both, but also shifted the balance of power. The sheer scale of mainland China's economy meant that, over time, it would inevitably overshadow Hong Kong's. In 1997, Hong Kong's GDP was about 18% of China's. By the 2020s, this figure had fallen to less than 3%. This was not because Hong Kong's economy stagnated, it was because China's economy experienced explosive growth. This shift in economic weight had profound implications. Hong Kong remained an important financial center, but its relative importance to China's overall economy diminished. From the early days after the 1997 handover, there were signs of differing interpretations of the Basic Law. The Basic Law was Hong Kong's mini-constitution. It was meant to codify the one country, two systems principle. However, Beijing retained the power of final interpretation. This power would prove to be significant. Disputes over issues like the right of abode for children of Hong Kong residents born on the mainland showed these early tensions. Beijing's interventions, though initially infrequent, set precedents. They signaled that the central government's view would ultimately prevail in matters it deemed important. Influence from Beijing grew gradually but steadily. Mainland businesses increased their presence in Hong Kong. Pro-Beijing figures gained prominence in local politics. The Hong Kong government itself often seemed to align its policies more closely with the central government's priorities. This subtle shift was sometimes hard to pinpoint, but over 2 decades the cumulative effect was a noticeable erosion of the clear separation that many had expected. The autonomy granted was always conditional, subject to the overriding authority of the one country. The National Security Law of 2020 had an immediate and profound impact. Dozens of pro-democracy activists, politicians, and journalists were arrested. Many civil society organizations disbanded. The vibrant political debate that once characterized Hong Kong was stifled. People became afraid to speak out. The law created a climate of fear. Activities that were previously considered legitimate expressions of dissent were now potentially crimes. This included peaceful protests, critical speeches, and even social media posts. The space for opposition voices shrank dramatically, a stark contrast to the freedoms previously enjoyed. Recent actions by authorities, as reported in late 2024, illustrate this ongoing trend. Bounties were offered for overseas-based pro-democracy campaigners. These individuals, located in countries like Britain and Canada, were accused of national security offences. Their alleged crimes included incitement to secession and collusion with foreign forces. Furthermore, Hong Kong authorities revoked the passports of other activists. These measures demonstrated the extraterritorial reach of the national security law. They aimed to silence critics even beyond Hong Kong's borders, sending a chilling message to the diaspora. The crackdown in Hong Kong did not go unnoticed by the international community. Governments in the United States, the European Union, and Great Britain voiced strong condemnation. They criticized the arrests of activists, the imposition of the national security law, and the erosion of democratic freedoms. The bounties for overseas activists and the cancellation of passports in late 2024 drew further criticism. These nations expressed concerns over the extraterritorial application of the security law. They urged an end to the targeting of individuals advocating for freedom and democracy. These statements highlighted a growing rift between China and Western powers over Hong Kong's status. These political shifts had a tangible impact on Hong Kong's global reputation. For decades, Hong Kong was known as a vibrant, open international business hub. The ongoing crackdown, however, raised serious questions about these fundamentals. The one country, two systems deal for Hong Kong was perhaps doomed from the start. It was an ambitious attempt to reconcile two vastly different systems. The inherent flaw lay in the power imbalance. China always had the capacity to define the terms. The British hoped for lasting autonomy for Hong Kong, but this hope was pitted against a rising China. Complete separation was unrealistic. Economic interdependence pulled Hong Kong towards the mainland. Hong Kong relied on China for resources. Its economy became deeply intertwined with China's growth. These factors made complete separation unviable. The two systems were always conditional upon the one country. When Beijing perceived a threat, it acted decisively. The consequences of this flawed promise are now evident. Hong Kong's autonomy has been significantly curtailed. Its vibrant civil society has been suppressed. Its distinct political identity is fading.